A lad wakes up in an unexpected room to find his phone alert on. He shocks himself, opening his eyes. Red scriptures paint the whole chamber. He questions who could have penned all that while he slept. Oddly yet, the letters start to vanish. Then, because he just woke up, he believes he must have been dreaming. Odd how realistic it appeared. He then turns to the side and sees, though, he is not in his room right now. Rising, he questions the nature of this place. There are no more the instant noodles he ate or the 2 tissues he tossed on the floor. He obviously becomes perplexed and begins to spiral. From another existence of someone exactly like him, he appears to get memories. Though they took different paths, both are orphans. Our protagonist entered an outstanding university after studying all his life. But the man whose body he acquired left school and had a terrible career. He questions whether he is in some other universe looking at his shaking hand, and how related those phrases penned in blood on the ceiling. Nothing about the recollections of the original owner of this body reflects that. He stands there seeking to make sense of everything. When a husband answers a call stating breakfast is time, he turns around and finds a woman with great curvaceous lines. Glancing at her thighs, he wonders what this husband thing is about. Did he get married early in this other world? Getting late, she tells him to get up from the bed. The scoundrel already believes that the transmigration wasn't too horrible. He swallows fiercely, believing he would never have such a lovely and gentle woman without this transmigration. She continues phoning him to have breakfast. Whether he should call her darling wife or baby is unknown. Then he chooses to search for her name, so that would be simpler. He starts to ponder and discovers oddly nothing. His brain seems to separate. No name, no experience, no hobbies, no preferred position, nothing. In his memory, she is totally not at all like. He hesitantly turns around and finds she is motionless. He already finds this so-called wife to be unusual, and a fly finds its way on her eye. Hesitating, he queries her name. She pauses just for a second. Then she adds he seems to be seeing, already starting a terrible mouth. Sweating cold, the protagonist remarks he is only a little perplexed. He will give it appropriate thought. She has already, however, evolved into a massive beast claiming to be sightful. He cries for a moment, then gets eaten in the next. Abruptly, he wakes up in bed, sweating coldly, and wonders what occurred. Looking up, sure all was a dream, he finds the words and blood once more there. He feels there might have been some sort of clue there. He cannot interpret them, and the items vanish. Glancing at his own hand, he believes he will have to pass for blind. But he knows. He feels his hand on his skull. It makes no sense since the owner of this body remembered himself not blind. Usually living alone, he never noticed anything unusual and never heard from anyone. He cannot thus tell this woman he can see her. He will have to pretend she doesn't exist right now. A hand beckons him from the door, stating he just woke up and it's breakfast time. She approaches seductively, while he believes he will have to overlook and see how the last owner lived. She asks whether he is waking and sets the Dragon Balls in play. Sweating cold, he understands he cannot see or move, otherwise he will die. She abruptly turns her neck, though, and walks over to him. He tells himself he cannot react. She keeps going closer, though, and her tongue abruptly comes out of her lips. He reacts when it touches his face, and therefore she knows he can see. A curse starts to engulf his face, and he bursts suddenly. He opens his eyes in the following second and gets up shocked once more. But just now he is furious at that nasty woman. The unfortunate man attempts to stop to reason and begins to ponder as he wakes up sweating chilly. Is this a time loop, or he is being resurrected? Apparently it's like saving a point in a game. Knowing she wanted him to exhibit a reaction, he takes his phone. Once more she shows up behind him and says it's time for breakfast. He puts on TikTok videos of dancing e-girls to act as though he's busy. She begs her husband to stop staring at other ladies like that in front of her. Saying he loves that female from the live broadcast, he begins chatting to himself. His wife queries him about whether he likes her anymore in meantime. She walks over and claims she understands he lacks eyesight clarity. Why then is the phone rather close? Is he coincidentally seeing her? Returning to play with his phone, he wonders whether he could not seem peculiar. He cools off a little, though, as she showed no emotion. He then resumes searching for further live feeds. Then starts to grow terrified, though. She seems live on his phone. Haunted, he gets up and tosses the phone on the bed. She behind him says he can see as he quakes a little. She expands her mouth monstrously to consume him. Still, he comes to deliver a blow now. She dodging, though. He is then powerless as well. He bites his arm, dies once more in agony. He questions whether that is indeed his remains as she eats on the bits. and he begins to fade once more. She says it once more, breakfast is due, and she walks over, shocking him. He still became terrified just by her approaching his face up to the 6th time he resurrected, and he passed away several times since he lacked really good acting. He tried to flee that room on the 8th occasion, but she could be seen and recognized that was not possible. He thus came to the conclusion that, given no escape, he should act as though he liked her. He stated she was brilliant as soon as she arrived to have breakfast. He intended to maximize profit from that as well. Ultimately, though, she ate everything while he went hungry, and so he passed 13 times in a succession in search of some means of relaxation. Some crazy people turn rather sane, but death stayed returning for him. It came up at 14, 15, 16, and he woke fresh memories of the owner of that body with every death. He began to grasp a little about that world and how unlike his own. There are strange stories abound here. He questioned his reason for reliving the 18th death. Why do the words vanish as soon as he gazed at them? Who penned those in blood? He opens his eyes once more, perplexed over who is accountable for all this. Though he is not sure who it is, he knows his wife is among them. She exists as a monster, and he started telling himself that she ought to die since he deserved to live. She arrived once more, calling him husband and declaring it was breakfast time. He got up knowing that, although she never makes physical touch, every time she comes to perform this, she inquired if he wanted to start the day with some hot, wet meat while standing in the entrance. He approached rather closely, yet he followed customary behavior. She can only act where she is sure he can see. Desperate at his side, she said she already made breakfast and was ready for him while he went to get ready. The impoverished man groaned, believing that the better the deception is, the more lovely it is. She is insisting stuff is ready, but obviously nothing is ready. Knowing only by leaving that room would he find something about his wife, he made his snack. She had become the floor when he went to bite the snack, begging whether he was seeing anything. Knowing he had to leave somewhere, he went to open the door. She also showed herself on the doorknob, inquiring about his whereabouts and the reason he wouldn't be staying home with her. Saying to himself, no one kills him 18 times and gets away with it. He just opened the door and left the room. He seeks retribution now. He will come back here right once he discovers a means of eradicating her. He gets scared looking at the heavens as soon as he opens the flat door, though. Deformed monsters abound in the Crimson Planet. Right in front of him, just the outlines of individuals. That makes him afraid. Hence he starts laughing like a psychopath and says that this planet is rather fascinating. But he starts to feel weird and passes throw on the sidewalk. Then someone shows up wondering whether the uncle is all right. He seems shocked, and it's only a small child wondering whether he is sick. She can call him Big Brother. He tells her he is all right. Patting her head, he would want to have a daughter since she is so adorable. She immediately gets misshapen, though, and says he can see. His heart pauses, then he glances up. The girl developed into a massive blade-equipped demon. Our protagonist says that this universe is very interesting, and then starts laughing hard, unable for words. He tells her he truly enjoys this look as, then, he won't feel any guilt when he murders her. Without regret, he will finish all the weirdos here. But this time he was split to bits. He wakes up in bed once more with the balloon woman wondering whether her husband is all right. The sun is getting up already. The poor man finds it somewhat exhausting to have breakfast 20 times in one day. He is seated on a park seat some later. Once more, the small child visits to find her mother absent. He can bring her home. One kind of the totally bizarre and crazy ones is the one he's contemplating on the craziness and all the varieties of strangeness in this region. Though they are hostile, they cannot influence anything like air. The other kind are those exactly like people. They only aim to get near to you. Still, they move right away upon receiving a reaction, exactly like that wife. He is aware that none of the average human living in that planet could see their existence. Still, they bind to each other. Why do they aspire for that? Perhaps these beings wish to fit into human existence, he wonders. Later on, he is clutching his phone and finds 3 cents paid. At least he will need some money to find the necessities if he is to survive in this planet. In the work group, Wu Dai is phoning for him. Our protagonist goes under Yizhui Feng Xiu. He knows he hasn't gotten the commission for one he sold lately. He works selling flats for a corporation. He then messages claiming he will pay for that to be settled, and he accelerates on his bike. When he arrives, oddly, it is a hospital rather than the corporate headquarters. The location more resembles an abandoned structure. Standing sweating cold at the entryway, he wonders if this is the sales venue. He grabs the door and his phone rings. Inquiring whether everyone is in the office, he says he is on his way. Indeed, the owner's son attempted phoning him multiple times but did not answer. That's good, the protagonist says. Then he will come up. Our lad understands that reality most certainly shapes this location. Still, the call participants seem to be performing really well. Though weird, he also finds it fascinating. He abruptly runs into something as he is walking down the corridor. Feeling he touched something soft, he wonders what it was. Calmly reaching with his hand, he wants to find out whether that is the limit he can travel with. Still, what he touches are two mystical spheres of clairvoyance foretelling a nice future. The rascal flushes, then feels something. A slap strikes his face. The girl runs at the guard as he is not sure what is happening. She seems screaming that she would complain about him. Upon search, he finds Baylor Academy. But the place returns as soon as he blinks as the deserted hospital. He stretches toward a hospital wall, but oddly his hand passes through. He understands he cannot connect with the actual form of it, and wonders maybe it is similar to the animals needing particular environments. He sweeps his hand across the wall once again, and then proceeds through it. He sees an abandoned passage, and starts to feel slightly vertigo. He visited numerous rooms sometime later, but they are all empty. But there smells strongly of blood in one of the doors. Hezin returns to travel across it once more. He finds himself in a room with apparently a crying female on the floor. She starts to sit up and stares at him, calling him Big Brother while he keeps searching. Now, though, he is tough and dismisses her, going past the wall. He meets another thing as soon as he emerges on the other side, but he goes on traveling. The monster, too, seems perplexed and understands there are hundreds of unusual objects there. Every place he visits is full of strange objects. The odd thing is that some chambers are open in a way they may be escaped from. He is now showing good and lacks response, thanks in great part to the loving wife who killed him 18 times. He looks suddenly at some papers on the floor discussing experiment number 128's transformation. Wondering whether all the transformed are human, he lowers to pick them up. Sadly, though, he doesn't belong in that universe, therefore he cannot even flip the page to know what's written. Something passes through him suddenly. He gets up, and on the ceiling he finds the hair of a monster. She asks why he is here as she falls next his face. By accident, is he seeking her to help him to study the secrets of life? He dismisses her in favor of perhaps the director's office as the better spot to visit. The mental hospital building is the same one from the recollection of the owner of the body, which ought to be a sales firm. Furthermore, the former staff room was located in the director's office. He chooses to see whether there is anything upstairs. Someone calls Brother Shu and asks what he is doing as he is walking down the hall. Abruptly, a fat man shows up yelling at him, demanding how he dares to show up for work if he has already been sacked. But believing there is nothing on this floor, Fang Shu pushes the two aside as he proceeds down the corridor. The man with glasses seems perplexed. The boss is berating him, questioning why he is heading to the second level, and advising him to stop. Our protagonist, though, is already on her way over there, and at last comes upon the director's office. He grabs his hand on the doorknob even as someone begs for him to halt. The buddies behind him are declaring it's all over and are getting scared. But you already know what's coming, based only on the leg. Look at the waistline and at the little mouth. The colleague was indeed already under pressure. Suddenly, he grabs her arm while the people wonder who the protagonist is and what he is doing there. She asks him what he's doing and tells him to let go, but he simply tosses her away, claiming she's too noisy. She falls. The man approaches to assist her without doing anything. He discovers a document on the desk. And as he anticipated, this mental facility has some sort of major secret. According to the message, he must enter room 520 if he is to get the gift of fate and discover the secrets of this planet. He goes wanting to know how they knew he was arriving, wondering whether this letter was meant for him. Room 520 is in Building C. The lamp exploded out of nowhere. While the other three who stayed behind are claiming they were terrified, the friend with glasses is still trailing. Turning on his phone, he remarks, "Something is not right." The buddy next to him notes, "He is being peculiar today. Why is he not engaging anyone?" Realizing he is in the old company, instead of the mental hospital, he uses the phone to light the second floor. The man enjoying fun asks the obese one for his phone, who replies it also has no signal. He assures him not to worry since his position allows him access to more than he could have dreamed. If he is correct, however, all these events point to them having entered another realm. Once a typical reality, a complete place now seems to be suffering deviations. Those who are working still find great concern over not providing the service. When one of the building's security guards asks whether everything is fine, he says he will investigate to find out what happened. Saying it's too weak, one of the females stoops to pick up her phone and switches on the flashlight. Also, there is the protagonist. Turning on his, he asks the man wearing spectacles why his light is likewise rather low. People are challenging the blonde man on his remarks on their entering an other realm. Saying they should remain calm since it is the only way they will survive, he loses his cool and orders everyone to shut down. Seeing he became agitated out of nowhere, people stop talking. And the man says, in plain terms, they had entered a ghostful world. They dwell in an other dimension, essentially. People wonder about the guard who went to check the light after momentarily silence. 3 minutes later, he still hasn't returned. Tang once more emphasizes that you cannot breach any ghost rules in this planet, else you will die. Shaking, the overweight man queries what they should do now then. He says that everyone in that area will die if they fail to quickly discover a means of escaping from there. The protagonist senses noises behind him while sweating chilly. From the known sensation, he understands a ghost is approaching. He tells everyone one is on their way. There isn't a ghost, hence people advise him to stop kidding. But one of the females is caught by her hair while Fang Tzu watches the people yell, until he states Shaoli is already gone. Fearful, the girl with spectacles claims she must have turned aside. She was right next to her and began urging her companion to say something. The darkness makes anyone there able to see anything well. Yu Tang inquires of the protagonist whether he observed the ghost's manifestation. He says that he cannot view it as the girl vanished unexpectedly. Everyone starts questioning Fang Tzu Shu at this point, claiming he is acting unusual. Yu Tang claims he seems not at all terrified. Was he a spiritual master? Uncertain. He probes what that is. The man finds it peculiar that Fang Tzu Shu is too tranquil yet does not know what a spiritual master is. One wonders about his identity. According to the man, a spiritual master is someone who can regulate their spiritual energy. These are the required persons in times like these. Fang Zhu queries whether the spiritual master item is someone who learnt it in the weird world. Should that be the case, he is curious about how to accomplish it. Tang notes once more his serenity and confidence. Hence, perhaps, he is the secret to escape from there. Then he says you have to acquire the spirit strength if you are to leave that planet. You have to satisfy 2 criteria concurrently. First is to experience an emotional trauma by going through the terror between life and death. And the second is to come into touch with the spirit to let its will permeate your soul. But you should exercise caution as ghostly power resembles a bloodied robe. It stains your soul in spite of covering your body. Hearing these remarks causes Fang Tzu Shu to reflect particularly since he knows he avoids touch with the spirit to not die after several deaths. From the wife to all the street animals, they are only illusions as long as he stays away from them. When a ghost materializes, though, it can murder without obvious indication. Hence, he might be able to eradicate them if he can get in touch with them. Is this a good thing, Fang Tzu Shu wonders? Recalling his wife, he claims he is insane to end her and become a spiritual master. Abruptly, another person from that location vanishes. Tang starts to go insane and orders everyone to close down, or else they would draw more ghosts. Fifi asks what they are going to do and approaches. She is worried about disappearing. Fang Zhu estimates 2 and 3 minutes. For men, precisely, it's a 3-minute delay. For women, it's 2. 3 minutes later, the guard vanished. The girl vanished 3 minutes later. 2 minutes later, the other man vanished as well. Under this reasoning, 3 minutes remain for another one of them to disappear. As he leaves, the guys question where he is going if he is trying to kill himself. Fang Tzu Zhu argues that everyone will perish in that chamber, thus they should start searching for a solution. Tang suddenly points at him and orders him to remain motionless since nobody is leaving that room. The protagonist dismisses him though, saying that given there are 8 of them, in 20 minutes there won't be none left. Looking back, Fang Tzu Shu warns anyone trying to stop him they will die before the spirits. As Fang Tzu Shu walks down the hallways, the companion with glasses asks why they never locate the stairs. Fang Tzu Shu notes the lights match those used in the hospital. He then understands they are back in the hospital right now, since as far as they recall, they were in the company, so a buddy wonders whether they are dreaming. Why now are they in the horror hospital? Now Fang Tzu Shu is certain that in this reality, the hospital and the firm are overlapping. The hospital sucked in the business. They spot a red pool right here, the corridor is filthy overall, and they identify the uniforms there as company issued. Fang Tzu Shu deduces from the 2 minutes the spirits spend with women and 3 with males that this is the time it takes to consume each kind of person. He claims they still have some time. The man wearing glasses comments it looks. They are still consuming jailing. The protagonist thinks this odd as everyone in the hospital was imprisoned. And the first time you passed through here, the hallways lacked all this blood. You discovered only one like that. The cuts on the clothes show they are using some sharp blades. He recalls that the ghost doctor he's seen just above him that time was the only one moving freely when something is emerging out of the ceiling. When they investigate, they find the party that was in the chamber approaching to inquire about what they would do after hearing some noises from that direction. The fat guy asks whether they found anything by first descending there. They seem a bit uneasy. They yell suddenly, and the girl reports there is a lot of blood there. Tang asks whether everyone was devoured, as everyone understands it from the attire of their allies. Pfeiffe, terrified, begs to go. Tang insists they truly should leave right away. When they ask Fang Su to lead, he says nothing. Following a period of stillness, he declares the time has arrived. Pfeiffe probes about the kind of time he is referring about, and behind them, hair starts falling. Hearing the sounds, they cautiously turn around. From the ceiling, the ghost doctor is walking towards. The second Pfeiffe freezes, the thing approaches the two of them. Telling the beast to flee, everyone runs madly, but Tang is stopped. Pfeiffe had fallen and is pleading for rescue. He tells the girl to let off of him when he sees the monster approaching, though, and slaps her. Fang Su recalls the time he saw the doctor while everyone runs. Pfeiffe is also pleading on the ground not to be abandoned. The thing is already clutching her by her hair. Tears in her eyes, Pfeiffe begged, but the lights went out and blood poured from that spot. Shocked to learn Pfeiffe was dead, the friend with glasses watched the monster not stop and keep striking her several times. She practiced a lot since Fang Su observed her scalpel techniques were quite advanced. Standing there were him and his friend, but the creature appeared not to be paying attention. 2 operations taken concurrently would be practically impossible. The monster closes her mouth to eat Pfeiffe and stores the scalpel. Fang Su knows she changed into a ghost. Thus her instinct to feed humans is merely that. As he gets closer, his pal wonders what he intends to do near the creature. Fang Su slaps her squarely fearlessly, although he is shocked. Her skin feels like steel hard. He recalls that in comparison to humans, all the species he came across are really strong. One can only become a spiritual master to alter this state of affairs. Declaring they have to flee, the friend calls for him. Fang Su says it's okay though. That beast only murders one person at a time. She's eating is thus the safest moment of all. The protagonist argues that Pfeiffe had an extra round bit of flesh there that would cause a small delay, even though the companion claims the monster will finish shortly. The pal passes out when learning that. Fang Su knows he must absorb cursed energy from and in a dimension like this, near the ghost is where the most concentrated power resides. The best method would be a physical contact. He pats the thighs of the ghost to check whether he becomes infected. Fang Su's patting the reversed legs of the monster. Though it's not the time for this kind of activity, the friend orders him to wake up, but Fang Su only says he can flee if he gets afraid. The man says all right, if so they ought to go all out. He approaches the protagonist to touch the ghost's legs, but quickly finds they are quite chilly. Patting, the companion replies nothing has changed. Fang Su adds they will keep on. The companion said he never imagined the first contact would be with a ghost, but these legs are somewhat too lengthy. The protagonist starts to see some latent ability in this man. He was dying with fear since before, but just now he is drooling. He says, a minute has gone by. They will annoy her for another 30 seconds before sprinting off. He gets up saying, it's time to run as soon as the phone's clock strikes 1.3. Oh. The pal wonders where he's going and if they could truly flee. Fang Su will exploit the geographical advantage to establish a distance from the doctor. He is sure where he is heading since he saw the hospital very carefully while he wandered about. But hair shows up front of him. He questions his miscalculation and her rapid finishing of her meal. There was enough flesh for Fifi. Then he finds 2 silicone implants laying on the ground. Everything was fakery. Today the ghost is behind him. Su slices exactly on his neck. The lad's cry shuts off at that. He opens his eyes once more when his head whirls through the air. Now, nevertheless, he is back the time of that monster, just at the friend's remark about extremely cold. Fang Su comes to see that events define the time loops. Alternatively, it may be like a game when you must pass a level, and part of it is stored. Though he knows he perished last time due of silicone, the friend is having fun. He cannot so make the same error this time. He snatches the lad fast and orders him to stand up. But drooling, the rascal notes that this is the first time they could stay somewhat longer, Feng Su warns that everything there is silicone, hence both of them will die if they do not run right now. Now, seeing why it was so large, the companion is startled. The two are thus already running down the stairs and run across the persons also arriving. The frantic throng begins to sprint ahead of them, but Feng Su leaps forward in front of everyone by grabbing the handrail. Not to skiv him like that, the overweight man tells him he thought it was the ghost, and the man with spectacles wanted to know why everyone was leaving so slowly. The man remarked they were not slow as they had already dropped 20 stories. Zhao Hao countered that since he and Feng Su just dropped 3 to catch up with them. That is not conceivable. The folks tell him to quit lying and shut up. Tang knows, though, that the ghost is forging bogus roots. He laments that creatures like this can lead to illusions when one is caught. Thoughtful Feng Su watches the conversation. Then he walks over and orders everyone to mark the path by throwing any extra goods on the ground. They then yell and begin to toss everything they own from pockets and backpacks. Then he orders everyone down the stairs swiftly. They start sprinting, and after some while they discover everything once more. The men identify the money and bottles they had tossed. Still, Feng Su found the little shirt appealing. Tang yells suddenly and says only a spiritualist can see the exit. He orders everyone to turn on their power and attempt to see something. Clasping his hand, he wonders whether that past experience was sufficient to unleash the powers. Still, he expects it's a means of escape from there. Not knowing how they would be doing that, the folks are perplexed. They begin to try like the man did while Feng Su watches the steps. It must be something as he recalls, the exits from these halls were on the right side. Tang wonders what he is going to do moving forward. He claims he is more fascinated in spotting hints to escape from there than in praying. While Tang felt he didn't hesitate even for a second when the monster emerged, Hao was amazed Feng Su was still somewhat calm. The odd part is that they discovered the two once they started running down the stairs. Not to add, both spent at least a minute in the corridor with a monster, so what happened? For whatever reason, the maniac comes to the conclusion they ought to be using the spirit. Although it makes a lot of logic, clearly he believes that is not feasible. Thanks God. Hao inquired what Feng Su was doing as he was caressing a wall. He counted from 10 to 12, then stopped. He stated he discovered it. When Tang showed up questioning whether they truly located it, the friend was surprised that there was a door at all. She came racing. The issue was opening it. He moved his hand in the emptiness, picturing where the lock ought to be. That let the door open from which an energy flowed. Tang banged into Feng Su, who was ready to enter, fled away claiming they were at last spared. Everybody passed him, furiously attempting to flee. Hao questioned his calmness and why he was allowing everyone to leave ahead. Feng Su understood quite well that trying to be quick had no use when confronting that thing. When a pudgy, big-nosed man showed up urging the two to run or they would be used as shields to die, clearly Feng Su had in mind who would be caught. The ghost would stop, then he could raise his spiritual might. The people kept running madly before suddenly they had to decide which way to go. This caused a divide in the team since everyone wanted other people to follow forward to test the roads, and Tang once more asked Feng Su what they should do. Should he discover that iron door, he has to know how out of there to get. Since everyone kept pressuring and expected him to die, Feng Su wasn't really eager about helping. The group kept yelling, urging him to speak fast as the ghost was on her way. Feng Su just remarked he didn't give a damn about that as he saw everyone there as only a tool. The ghost doctor was unbeatable at that instant. His only task was to purchase time. He believes he will have to sacrifice life to get out of there as he follows the correct road. The group starts fleeing as soon as they see him follow that road, and a hand can be heard behind. The last one is the obese man. Feng Su is aware very well that she arrived. Not far off on the ceiling, she is getting ready to strike. She goes to the last one as she watches everyone running away. The fat person panics, declaring he cannot die as the hair gets closer. Seeing a man in ahead, he grabs him by the collar and throws him back, thinking he denied permission for him to sprint faster. The blonde falls to the ground, yelling to the overweight man, but something has already cut his neck, and blood is all over the walls. Seeing how the man behaved, Feng Su believes he is no different from a ghost gone insane. Now, nevertheless, he must boost his spiritual development. When the group wonders what he's going to do, he is once more confronting the ghost. Approaching, the sick friend says he cannot have all the pleasure without asking him, like Ice Jade, saying that is smooth, cool skin like that. Feng Su believes the man has a sudden poetic bent. Given his craziness, Perhaps he will also awaken spiritual power, and together they could flee. When they are escaping once more sometime later, Fang Xiu wonders whether he is not terrified of death. Waiting for death is worse, according to Hao, than being slain outright. Besides, he trusts him just by virtue of his presence. They reach the cafe at that instant. Having been running for a long time, everyone is deadly hungry and thirsty. Saying he will distribute it to others later, Tang starts gathering everything. Approaching to ask to share a bit is the overweight guy. When some of it comes true, a girl reports finding something, and he advises her not to move. He approaches the door declaring they are saved, but right away he unlocks it and finds another door at the corridor's end. The light there seems to Fang Su to be more subdued than it has been. Fang Su reports it's not locked as he gets closer to the door. It looks to be a utility room as they open it. That marked the end of their chosen road, and the issue now is that they will have to wait for someone to die and divert the doctor's attention back off. Everyone cursed the protagonist for picking the incorrect road while he began to look for the ghost. He obviously objected as he didn't ask anyone to accompany him. Hao said everyone should do what they wish, and Brother Fang Su refrained from pressuring anyone to do as he suggested. A fat man grumbled, claiming it was useless, as he seemed to have chosen without knowledge. Saying to focus as survival was the first concern, Tang aimed to cool everyone down. From what he saw, he stated, "That creature assaults one person at a time and rests 2 to 3 minutes. Now the decision is to designate someone to act as a diversion so that everyone may flee." Fang Su sensed right away the course of events, saying that without him none would be there. Tang came and struck him on the breast. He thus would have to be the one selected to pay for the misdeeds. When Hao questioned what he was doing, Tang yelled for everyone to assist, but Fang Su intervened and choked him. He beckoned the obese man to assist as he was being hauled away. He now put Hao in a chokehold too and dropped with him to the ground. The door banged close out of nowhere. Fang Su had withdrawn himself outdoors. The group questioned his behavior. Fang Su claimed he never expected he would be so fascinated in humans. They supposedly are stranger than ghosts. He cautioned everyone to pay next time even if he appreciated their attention. He then passed once again. The group unlocked the door as his body dropped to the ground so they could flee. Hao headed to assist Fang while crying, and Tang turned around, grinning, to find something horrific. Fang Su was smiling even dead, and advised him to simply wait a bit more. Back to the moment he cautioned it was silicone, he bolted, but this time he was macabrely smiling. Once more, he fell in front. The guys were fleeing down the stairs, believing the ghost was approaching. Ignoring everyone, he started sprinting while they questioned his behavior. The group was once more struggling with marching in circles as he downed the steps counting. He got to the door and opened it without thinking twice. Nobody understood his rapid finding of it. Tang questioned whether he had awakened his spiritual powers, but he simply disregarded them and cautioned they had 1 minute before the ghost would materialize. Tang grinned and said it seems he had actually awoken his powers. He would pay 5 million should he assist him in escape. Fang Su merely grinned though, stating he had to finish something before going and there was no hurry needed. Fang Su kneed Tang in the groin just as he was about ask what it was. The wretched man moaned and collapsed in agony on the ground. Fang Su advised he should treat that with the 5 million. Tang said, agonizing, he could pay considerably more if only he requested. Still, the protagonist was frigid now. The rest of the business began to criticize him, wondering how he could be so filthy. Fang Su cautioned, though, that the speed of the ghost was unforroutable. Everyone was saved, though, because Tang on the ground. Regarding this idea of being saved, the group found perplexity. Suddenly, another kick fell, and the obese man was wriggling on the ground. Fang Su remarked he should have passed away long ago. Hao and the others were wondering whether he had gone insane, and whether he would treat everyone in this manner. Fang Su insisted no, since he needed at least one person remaining. Hao said the strategy was sound. Every member started to wonder whether he was indeed human. He indicated the direction and warned they had little time. But since he was not setting the example, the group started to doubt. Fang Su claimed he would merely visit to touch some thighs. The group was perplexed, and the psychopath friend admitted he absolutely wanted to stay then. Once more, the doctor ghost came forward. The group started running once they noticed her. To see what would happen, they halted just behind the wall, though. As the protagonist observed the creature making approach, Tang begged to be saved right on ground. He quickly discovered, though, that his pants were damp. Internal bleeding from Fang Su's kick drove him to leap, to seize his legs, declaring they would die together. But Fang Su only stomped on his hand and advised him not to panic. He would remain there, right next to him, seeing his death. The creature grabbed his neck, therefore the man vanished. Paint coated Feng Su's face. He even licked it. The man was indeed insane. He even claimed that the taste of retribution was not that unpleasant. But at that instant, he experienced something in his heart and questioned how his chest could be beating so rapidly. He thought it would be fantastic to watch his wife split apart like this person, suddenly hearing her calling for him. The group questioned if this was indeed his intention as he started approaching the ghost. He looked at Hao and recalled that the man had called him at the instant of his death. He thus invited his acquaintance to participate. But Hao seemed somewhat lethargic, and everyone referred to him as a ghost. Feng Su knew then that having died those 20 times and gone through so much craziness was making him devoid of emotional swings. His humanity was gradually vanishing, and at that instant, Zhao Hao and he were very different. He had no choice. Nevertheless, therefore, he wouldn't press his friend. But Zhao claimed abruptly that he was the one person he could rely on in that organization. He would trust his scheme since he was his only real friend, but he stated he looked horrible with that wine all over his face. But he quickly came approaching, ashamed to turn on more spiritual force. Hao questioned why he attacked those two as they were enjoying fun. Based on the speed of the ghost, Feng Su claimed, escape was impossible, and those two, occupying greater roles, would jettison the rest as soon as she caught up. He felt something abruptly and asked Hao whether he sensed a chill approaching his body. Hao objected. He was normal. Feng Su knew it was not an illusion. He was experiencing the effect of the ghost's power. Though the link appeared to be at a critical stage, he observed it was rather weak. Maybe it was the forerunner of acquiring spiritual ability. Hao, though, appeared driven now, searching for this frigid area. He suddenly said they should sprint, but Feng Su noted there was no issue since the overweight man was lying close by. The youngster grinned, adding it was rather welcome news. But he was not feeling anything. Hence he wondered what it felt like to awaken spirituality. What he most likely lacked, Feng Su clarified, was life or death circumstances. He did not experience it since the mental state had not yet reached the required level. When Feng Su went through something like that, Hao found odd and questioned. The overweight guy remarked, it was a good thing she was licking his face, would take roughly 5 minutes. This would be their opportunity to absorb as much as feasible. And the frigid energy started to permeate Feng's body. He began to attempt to sense where it was heading, and shortly he felt it seemed to be moving to his brain and heart. Now they were becoming ice blocks. A frigid blade sliced right across his whole body, and following his shattering, a light showed up in his chest, a focused flash transforming into a crimson sphere. Feng Su knew his 5 senses had intensified as soon as he came to. Even his control over his body and mental speed had improved. More of the planet seemed to be open to him. He understood, nevertheless, he had awakened less than 1% of his spiritual power. The talent seemed to be connected to his emotional need. He puzzled what that was and felt a shock in his heart. He tormented himself and questioned if his capacity was to the pattern of deaths created his strongest wish to go back that sensation. He could make opponents suffer all of it, negative emotions, mind distortions, agony, etc. He smiled suddenly, then began to giggle, claiming he was now rather remarkable with his skill. Hao questioned whether that had worked after seeing him go nuts. Feng Su came to the conclusion that, for him, he had gotten the finest conceivable ability. Recalling his beloved wife, he went in a trance while Hao shouted for him, stating 2 minutes had gone by. But Feng Su only advised him to move away during his power test. Hao retreated right away, stating it looked to have worked, and that was quite excellent. He went then to the ghost doctor. Focusing the power in his hand, he knew it contained all he had gone through those days. He understood that he would gather more suffering and grow more strong the more times he passed away. He could endlessly improve himself as long as he was being revived. Saying he wanted her to feel this masterpiece, he smacked the ghost in the face. The fist landed squarely, yet the force seemed to vanish. She dropped the scalpel and collapsed on the floor, sobbing. But Feng Su knew right once that his punch was not very strong, and his meager spirituality was worn out. The blow had not harmed the ghost, and she appeared not to have felt the suffering he experienced. Hao remarked maybe it was time to flee, or they could return to touching once he was considering this. Perhaps the greatest approach, he considered, would be to this enthusiasm toward weaponry. Regarding firearms, he had one right here on the ground. He bent down to pick it up, but felt an energy shortly. That blade attacked Fang's heart right away and felt impossible to lift. He could see all the times the weapon had been used, the unbounded suffering it had assimilated. But given his great resentment, he questioned whether he could use it to call off the doctor. He instructed Hao to clear a space. He struck the doctor exactly on the rear of the neck as soon as he did, but it had no effect. Hao exclaimed it didn't even leave a scratch and tug at her blouse. How would they have killed her like this? The friend repeatedly patted her back, and Fong Xiu realized it wouldn't work without spiritual strength. He realized then that right now revenge was not conceivable. She was rising and he was driving Hao, telling it was time to sprint. She considered where the scalpel was as soon as the creature stood up. He felt someone there walking with Hao. His improved senses let him see people around. When the two persons concealing showed up, Hao inquired about their destination. Hao labeled them cowards for fleeing and now returning to plead for aid. But Fong Xiu claimed there was one fix. They would have to pass by every one of the 4 entrances. Everyone was terrified. The man claimed they only had time to sample one as they were surrounded by a monster. Saying he wasn't dictating anyone to follow him, Fong Xiu turned aside them and left. They knew she was approaching as soon as they felt something behind them. Fong Xiu understood that the ghost would behave differently if he took the scalpel. Telling everyone to dash, he unlocked the door. Desperate, they began ascent of the stairs. The spirit started to rise the passage as soon as they closed the door, destroying from behind. She told him to return with a mac of her face. Ignoring everyone on the stairs, she walked straight to meet Fang and instructed him to turn over the scalpel. When Fong Xiu attacked, she managed to defend herself. Then, she opened her jaws and went for his neck. They passed through the east gate dead. They proceeded to another room. This time, he ended up coloring the slubby man somewhere else. He once more pilfers the scalpel and smiles as he turns another way. They arrived at the elevator after sprinting North Gate, but the monster opened the door and completed him off too as soon he tried to enter. He again experimented with the South Gate, but once more the flexible and malevolent spirit captured him. Actually quite nasty since his death. He gave the last door a try. He refused to believe he would always perish from pilfering the scalpel. She was quite quick, but he still had the opportunity to alter the path every time. It was almost if he could glimpse the future. He was aware of a safe left-oriented path. Still, something came at his neck and he died once again. Now he was sure he could do it. It had already been the Mac time. He led all in that same line. The ghost walked up behind everyone. She was returning to Fang. Hao turned at that point to warn him. She missed when she was about to strike his face since he sidestepped and stood face to face with the doctor. She was perplexed about his dodging, and Hao thought it unlikely he had done that. Fang chewed stream while grinning like a crazy person. She tried to strike him once more, and he avoided. Having seen her assault patterns after several deaths, he had learnt. Moreover, the suffering was strengthening his body and raising his spiritual might. Hao found his motions to be really impressive. The ghost absolutely hated this. She got ready to bite him and leap, but he was sure he now knew her path totally. He rolled to the side and sidestepped once more as she came at him again. Already becoming wild, the spirit told him to die already. The group found it unbelievable he was leaving her. Hao once again saw the doorway. Sure now they would escape. This was the power of a spiritual master, sprinting towards the door. Still, the ghost stopped in front of him quite oddly. She advised him not to go, since Fang Chu thought it unusual since she seemed afraid. He was perplexed. She left with that, aiming exactly on impoverished Hao. The underprivileged man staggered back, perplexed about what that icy object was. Running to Fang Chu, he inquired about what had transpired. Everything was normal, he continued, and therefore that was the road to survival. But he knew even the doctor left when she came upon that location. That suggested it might not be the exit, but rather something so horrible that herself felt terrified. He realized it was the mouth of a chasm. The group continued wondering why he chose not to sprint. He took a seat and remarked it was good to relax for some time. Thinking a little, he had an idea and instructed everyone to get up. Once more, they strolled through the hospital hallways, and he gently approached the metal door, wondering whether there perhaps was a great risk outside. Hao inquired whether opening it would not be dangerous as he started to do so. They had to walk and into the darkness, he added, without choice. There he saw nothing at all, and the place was so quiet he could hear his thoughts. Moving onward was the only choice as the darkness had sucked the road he came from. He continued to advance forward. The fundamental sense of time had apparently been devastated. The road seemed to have no finish. He opened his eyes and saw he was in front of the academy's door, after what felt like an eternity of walking, therefore casting doubt on whether he had truly fled. Everyone dashed by, and Hao rejoiced in at last escaping. The man wanted to leave there fast, and Hao yelled to Feng, instructing him to sprint too. Still, Feng Shu sensed something was unusual. Looking back, the hospital had vanished, and the only thing that stood clearly was the school. Hao claimed the day had been draining, and he simply wanted to relax at home. Feng sensed something at that point. Starting to sprint, he said it had disappeared. The city had no ghosts. That he fled without any thought infuriated him. He might welcome the hospital vanishing, but not the spirit's removal overall. How could he get retribution on his beloved wife? Saying that she had passed at his hands, he came before an automobile. He must therefore return home. The driver stopped though, and now he was in the passenger seat whispering to himself that she couldn't just vanish like that. He didn't want his wife to disappear like that. He fled home frantically as soon as the taxi stopped. The driver said he hadn't paid, but he didn't give a damn, and hurried up the stairs declaring the world couldn't vanish. Screaming she couldn't leave him like that, he entered his house. Still, the place appeared normal. Saying she had killed him 18 times, he collapsed to the floor after looking over every chamber. How could he survive without her over his lifetime? All that agony under the ghost doctor was meant for payback. To finish the ghosts, he gathered resentment and suffering. Suddenly, they were all gone. Lying on the bed, he pondered where he would direct all that hate, and now, devoid of any sensation, what then defined life? He got a text on his phone at that point instructing him to check the news. The Bailu Academy burned. He realized right away that the news covered a fire consuming the whole structure, including some of the managers there. More than 11 persons perished. The psychopath Feng Shu began to chuckle as the message claimed they discovered his dead body. Thinking that presumably the enigmatic events had not stopped, he grew enthusiastic. Now that he was convinced he would see his wife once more, it only wanted to play hide and seek with him. He was getting a lot of texts from the supervisor on his phone, instructing him to report to work. Given this guy was dead, he laughed. It was amusing that the manager kept directing him to work even dead. Abruptly, a gory message showing that he didn't know emerged on the phone that simply because he wasn't speaking meant nothing. From the phone, an energy emerged and formed an eye identifying him. It gave him direction to follow right now. Only having one, Feng Shu gently grabbed the eye and instructed it to stop carrying the phone. That helped the delusion to vanish. Still, he was interested to discover the following riddle. Now standing at the utterly wrecked academy, he considered it quite realistic and smelled the burned stuff. He looked suddenly at Fei Fei standing there. All eager, she came to chat to him and reported he arrived early today. He questioned whether she was real and caressed her shoulders. She remarked he was becoming really audacious. Then he drew her, stating he understood exactly how things had gone. Hao showed up and asked whether he was compelled to work as he was about to mount the stairs. He questioned where Boss Dehai was and claimed he actually liked it rather much. Hao pointed and declared the man was behind the room. Strangely, the business was as busy as it had always been. Feng Shu started to question whether what he observed was a lie, and this was really reality. He was chastised upon discovering the manager for not responding to the group message on why he hadn't ignoring this. Feng Shu questioned when he would get his payback. Dehai claimed he had the nerve to show up late and discuss commissions, while Feng Shu protested, claiming Dehai was nasty even dead. Pointing his finger at him, the manager asked what he was dying from and advised him to talk correctly, as he was quite much alive. But Feng Shu abruptly ended him with the sword of the ghost doctor. The manager moaned and dropped to the floor. Feng Shu grinned and said Naomi apparently was dead now. Everybody in the office gets up to fix their eyes on him. Walking over to Hao, Feng Shu pats his shoulder and probes about what transpired. Hao's body suddenly infales and changes. Realizing everyone's bodies are cursed, Feng Shu begins finishing them off. He knows it's all a dream when he asks whoever did this whether they had enough fun when he's done. Ground-based, the people are writhing.